Hey friends, welcome back to Unfeigned Christianity, where we help Christians find culturally aware, biblically nuanced, and Jesus embodying responses to current day issues. One of the current day issues that we are dealing with today is just sexual abuse and abuse scandals in religious organizations. And is that current day that, that's abuse is not new, cover up is not new, but something that is a little bit new and kind of unique to our time is that we have awareness campaigns. We have more advocacy movements to care for the people that are victims of abuse and so forth. And we have things like podcasts where we can bring people on to tell their stories. And so these conversations are talked about more and more. Creates kind of a social awareness, also kind of social accountability and social nudging towards health and towards reform and doing things, doing missions, doing church, doing community in a healthy way so that abusers are not given home. And I'm excited to have on the podcast this week Dylo Cadet, who wrote the book In the Name of Mission Work. I don't know if you've heard of it. You can access it on Amazon, but this is basically the firsthand account of the whole Jeriah masked sexual abuse scandal that happened in Cam's involvement in Haiti, Christian Aid Ministries, and so forth. And so he's on the podcast today. He tells his story. Obviously, it's fairly abbreviated. It's somewhat of a long podcast, and yet we still just kind of skimmed over the top of the story. If you want to read it for yourself, just go ahead and get the book. You can access that in the link in the description of this podcast or video, however you're listening to this. But I'm just going to turn it over to our conversation. We do dive at the end. We spend some time discussing for the Patreon members. We discuss like what would it have looked like if everything was handled well from the beginning, if when he reported the abuse, like how could things have been handled in a healthy manner. And he has some really, really good feedback in that regard, and it begins with the churches at home. So if you're interested in that, if you would like to access the expanded version of the podcast, there's a link below, or you can go to asherwhitmer.com/member and become a member and access all expanded versions of the podcast. But other than that, we basically just kind of discuss the book and discuss the whole scandal and kind of how it was handled and so forth. All right. I'm excited to have a new friend on the podcast. I'm a little apprehensive to pronounce his name because I hate mispronouncing names, but I also want to say it just for practice and because it's his name. But Dylo Cadet. Did I say that right?
That's close. That's close.
Goes also by Dylo, which is a little easier for us Americans to handle. But yeah, thank you for coming on and being willing to have a conversation. Just to give some context, Dylo recently published a book. See if I can bring it in. Oof, that's big. In the Name of Mission Work. You can get it on Amazon, or I know you can get it on Amazon. I'm sure there's other places, but it basically is the story of particularly your experience in working with Christian Aid Ministries in Haiti and the whole Jeriah masked sexual abuse scandal that came to light in 2019. But you were really kind of there from the beginning for that journey, even trying to report it to Cam early on. And so it's a it's not necessarily an easy read. It's very well written, so it's easy to read in that way, but it's graphic, and it's also just difficult to read, to think that this kind of thing was happening in the name of mission work. But one of the things that I really appreciated was just the context that you gave for yourself. And so I thought maybe we'd start our conversation here. We want to get into the Jeriah Mast case. We want to get into working with Cam and missions. But maybe let's just start by hearing your story. And yeah, you can include as much or little as you wish, but just your journey to faith, growing up in a Christian home. Your dad was a pastor, right?
Yes, still
Yeah,
is.
he still is. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just turn it over to you. You can kind of start us off where you think we should start.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Asher. It's a pleasure and a privilege. Yeah, just like you said, Dylo, it's probably easier for everybody. So I was raised in a Christian family, uh, more on the conservative side, um, not Anabaptist necessarily, but very close. And ever since I was born, um, I found that my dad is a pastor and a teacher of the Bible. And we always had friends, in Christian communities, other families, other pastors around. And along with friends of my dad, they had a group, not not like a church, but well, I guess you could call it a church, because wherever people are gathered in the name of God and teaching the Bible and singing, I guess you could call it a church. So, and at that time, we were living in Port-au-Prince, more like in Corfu, the south part of Port-au-Prince. So, yeah, we lived there for a number of years, and my dad was also always involved in ministry and preaching, going places on mission trips. Um, and as the oldest, I got to go with him many times, and I fell in love with just like any child, whatever your dad is doing, your mom is doing, you pay attention, you develop an interest in that. So that was me. I was very into the Bible, uh, into church life, into asking questions and stuff like that. So I grew up like that, and in 2002, um, we moved from Port-au-Prince to the countryside. This is where my dad felt that he was led by God to go pastor a church, and and that's when I like a formal church. Um,
Mm.
I live like with my dad as an ordained pastor, right? And that is when really I got exposed and got familiar with with a very dogmatic, legalistic system. And I go in more details about in the book, but that sort of became the thing I started to fight against ever
Mm.
since I was a teenager. Just doing my best to always ask questions because I was taught that the Bible is the authority, right? And so I started asking questions based on the Bible. How can we be doing this in this way or doing this in that way, based on what I was taught to be true growing up? And that is when I started to realize, the power of religion and the power of our leaders and how destructive it can be. So I'd say ever since I've been on a journey uh, to fight for my faith,
Mm.
but not
Mm.
just against the enemy, but against inconsistencies and against
Hmm.
abuse and partiality and um, just selfishness of many of our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so one friend, well, after a few years, don't want to get into many details. um, After a few years in the countryside, it's called Labish, the place. After a few years living there, a friend with my dad introduced us to to some missionary friends, right? And that is where during I think the first visit, one missionary, as you know, dry masked, abused me. And yeah, and that starts another journey with for me trying to fight again for truth, trying to report. It wasn't taken seriously. More cases, more abuse, trying to report again. Um, we're told it would be taken care of, and the rest is history. I think we know some about the case already. But back to your questions. Yeah, I was raised in a Christian family, in a dogmatic, legalistic, you could say, and with a lot of with our leaders holding a lot of power and influencing the people in the way they understand the Bible. It's just teaching and applying the Bible in a way that makes them feel powerful. Yeah, so that is my background. It's I thought it was important that people have an idea, at least of where I come from on the Haitian side, and
Mm-hmm.
it's important for me so people know that abuse and legalism it exists everywhere as well, and there is a version of it in every country, in every society, every community, because it is one of the devil's most effective weapons. Is the misuse of power, misuse of authority in our religious context. Is one of the is one of the very faithful crowd that the devil can always count on to destroy Jesus, I could say, to fight against Jesus, not destroy, can never destroy him. But ever since the Lord was on earth, he could always count on the religious leader to just assassinate or just create confusion and create lies around the person of Jesus. And I think it's still very much the same, and it wasn't different for me growing up in Haiti. So that is my background. Just a lot of abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, it hasn't changed. Hasn't
Yeah.
changed. Um, but that is the background that I grew up in, and the background, like you said, that I then started to work with missions and was introduced to Anabaptism and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was interesting reading your story, and obviously you do go into a lot more detail in the book. Um, but just seeing that there was already, because I think if I heard you accurately in your book, some of the abuse you dealt with prior to Cam, prior to any of that, probably caused some confusion then when you started dealing with abuse from Cam and or through Cam, and wondering, even I think after your initial encounter with Jiraiya, you spent several years trying to erase it or
Yeah,
block it from your memory. And a lot of that had to do with how Haitian pastors responded to you about it all, and just kind of the gaslighting, I guess you might say,
Mhm.
that you dealt with. The other thing I found interesting that I thought it was just a good reminder is it can be easy for American missionaries to go into a country and assume that they're bringing. I don't know if you sense this at all. I don't remember you talking about it specifically in the book, but if you sense this from missionaries coming in, but it can be easy to think, oh, we're going to a foreign land, we're bringing the gospel here. But almost every place, except for some Far East tribal areas, but even there, I've been surprised sometimes, like how much they do have a context for the gospel already, and there are Christians in that area. There are churches that are trying to follow Jesus in that area. That was kind of interesting getting that context for. Is that something you sense at all with missions coming to Haiti? Is that they're bringing the gospel in, um, or do you feel like a lot of missions do have an awareness of the Christian presence in Haiti?
Yeah, yeah, good call. That's a good observation, and it definitely exists. And and since it's tied with material help or with money,
Hmm.
um, in in French we have that saying that says "qui finance commode." It means whichever one has the finance is the one that has power. So even if you go to an area where the gospel already exists and people are already serving God, and the fact that as a missionary you go there with money, supposedly, right?
Hmm.
With
Hmm.
you're the one who can bring something that they don't have, maybe build a school, uh, do some humanitarian work, start a clinic, or support, give some type of support. Then with that financial power, it automatically, and I wish it wasn't like that, but
Hmm.
a lot of time our local leaders will will like kind of submit and will act as if um, they never heard about the gospel, for instance, or
Hmm. Hmm.
they would overlook certain doctrinal differences, or they would, um, yeah, it's just finding a way. How can we make it easy for them to invest in our community?
Yeah.
So, but like you said, that's a good call, and that that speaks a lot about the faithfulness of God, and that the kingdom is marching on wherever you go.
Hmm.
So that's a very good call to always remember. Maybe God is calling me to serve in that area, but you know, to not think that I'm the one bringing the gospel there.
Hmm. Hmm.
God has a purpose for me, and but yeah, that's good. The gospel is already there. The people are already serving God. The Spirit of God is already moving there. That's good.
Hmm. So what led you to start working with Cam as a translator? Or yeah, what was your initial encounter with Cam?
Well, it's. I think it's important for me um, to make some distinctions. I so CAM is probably one of the biggest missions in Haiti, like all denominations,
Hmm.
included,
Hmm.
and it, I think it's the biggest one as far as the Anabaptists go. And and the way the Anabaptist missions work in Haiti, it can be hard to know who you're working for exactly at a certain period of time. For instance,
Okay.
um, I talk about some accounts in the book or some of the abuse happened. They would be during events that were these events would be held or would be organized by different missions. Like
Hmm.
Anabaptists, they like to work together. So you
Hmm.
can have a revival going there. The translator is from Kim. the team is coming from another mission, the vehicle, the driver is with another mission,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So whenever we say CAM, it may be some people in the team is from CAM, but there are also other missions. So to your question, um, so a friend of my dad was involved with Anabaptist missionaries. He worked for CAM. He was also involved with another mission. I think it's called Charity Missions
Oh,
of
okay. Hmm.
yeah. So got introduced. He introduced his team. I think he had a team, and he went and visited my dad's place with the team. So and that's so as a pastor's kid, my proximity to the team was pretty pretty evident. So I got
Hmm.
to befriend them and be around them and you know talk to them and stuff like that. And I think that team liked the 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 legalistic, the controlling,
Hmm.
micromanaging system that exists in my church, in the local church, and they thought that would be a good fit for the network, you know. And that is when their relationship developed with the local church. I go in some details about the book how it developed from just coming and preaching about um, sin, about Bible doctrines, to um, start to teach about Anabaptist ideals,
Hmm.
and it evolved from there to my dad, starting working with camps, continuing and supporting the school that we had at church, and me working with different missions on, maybe stuff like mobile clinics, or interpret for, when people come to mobile clinics, or
Hmm.
interpret in revivals, in trainings and stuff like that. So um, it pretty quick people started discovering me as a translator and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that was how I kind of got into that system. And then
Yeah.
in 2014, I was contacted by Cam to join their discipleship program as a translator. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you went through the program as a student, or specifically translating for the teachers?
So the way it works, they would hand select people that they know, that they know is doctrinally close to the Anabaptists. So they would choose somebody that maybe his dad is a pastor, or he's raised in a church that that has a close doctrine to the Anabaptists.
Hmm.
And so I joined the program not as a student, but as a translator. But they wouldn't have chosen me as a translator if they weren't certain that my doctrine was close enough to what was
Yeah.
being taught. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, your initial encounter with Jiraiya, though, was before working was as a boy. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yes. Yes. So during one of these visits that I talked about with this group of missionaries, just getting closer and starting to visit my dad's church more often.
Hmm.
So my abuse happened was during a revival weekend, and my abuser was part of, that's another thing with the Anabaptists. Whoever is in the country the longest, get to play a role, so as an advisor or leader with the
Okay.
teams. So my abuser would be somebody who has been in Haiti for a longer period of time, and would be one of the team leaders, and one that who can translate, who's somewhat familiar with the culture. Um,
Mm.
so he was that in the team, and so after the service, he invited me to. He wanted to sleep in the church, and he set up his tent there. And in Haitian culture, it's not uncommon for several men to sleep together. Like when I say sleep together, not like but
Yeah,
to lay in the same room and sleep,
yeah.
whatever. That's not a big deal.
What?
So I was allowed. Go ahead.
Well, I was just curious. Like, is setting up a tent in the church, is that typical, or was that kind of unique?
Good call. Good call. I didn't think. So in Haiti, especially when there are teams, and
Okay.
not just American teams. Like if you're having a conference, something that lasts 2 3 days,
Mm.
usually you don't have a dormitory, for instance. So
Mm.
after church is dismissed, people would use the church. They would sleep in the church.
Oh, okay. I see.
So that's probably
Yeah.
new for you.
Yeah. No, that I've been in Nepal. I can remember where, yeah, we slept, like, guys were on one side, ladies were on
Hmm.
the other, and we slept in the
Exactly.
church. But the
Yeah.
having a specific tent, that was kind of a new thing to me.
Yeah. So that was how I was coming. So sleeping in the church wasn't a new thing, but for him to set up a tent, that was different. But it's
Oh,
worth
okay. Yeah.
mentioning too that the church wasn't like totally covered. So
Oh,
I think
okay.
half of the church was covered, but half of it was not yet. And I think he used
Yeah.
that as an excuse to set up a tent. Um, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
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 So yeah, the abuse happened. Don't want to go into too many graphic details, but I knew it was an abuse. I tried to convince him that what he was doing was wrong,
Hmm.
and he tried to manipulate me with the same gospel. Just I will pray afterwards. God will forgive us. It's nothing. Um,
Hmm.
he tried several times. I tried to resist him, and I finally um, woke up and went home. So so that was the instance. And um, so right before they left, so they were in our community for a few days. I think for a weekend. And if I
Hmm.
remember right, it was on Sunday afternoon, right before they left. I I gathered my courage and reported what happened to another team leader that came with the missionaries and a local pastor at my church. And um, they just denied it. And
Hmm.
I think one of them laughed at me as if I was crazy, and
Hmm.
it just basically ended up convincing me that what I'm reporting is a lie. And one of
Hmm.
them tried to talk to me and say, "Hey, I know you're not trying to lie, and but it's possible that maybe you just had a bad dream, you know."
Hmm.
And I think another pastor, the guy that came with the team leader, said that these people are too spiritual; they would never do something like that.
Hmm.
And I was really young. I was in my early teens. So the easiest thing for me was to just believe them, and
Hmm.
I think that made sense. It made sense, and it was easier to digest for me at that time.
Yeah. Why why do you think that was? Like, was this a new thing to have to deal with somebody reporting abuse, or was it the monetary, like the material, the way that Cam was helping out materially, that they were nervous of disrupting that? Or, yeah, what?
Yeah, I think it's probably a mixture of all of them.
Mm.
I think they were naive too, and
Mm,
probably just trusting too much.
mm,
I know the one guy um, who was a younger pastor, maybe probably not experienced enough,
mm,
and it's just I think at the beginning, um, yeah, they just believed in what they were doing so much,
mm,
and they could not accept the idea that something so ugly could be happening among the good they're trying to do. So it was just easy to just dismiss it and continue heads down. And like you said, I think what I was reporting was a threat to to the plans that they had. You know, it's an exciting it's an exciting thing for local church to start working with a group of missionaries. You know, and as pastors, as leaders, they have their vision, they have an agenda. You know, probably already dreaming and planning on what they want to do, to build this, want to build that, you know, want to ask for
mm,
this, want to ask for that. So whatever I had to report was just it was there was no room for it. Wasn't the
mm,
time.
mm.
So I think it's a little bit of of all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So after, when did that happen?
So that would be in the early 2000s,
Okay,
around 2003 ish, something like that.
okay.
Hmm.
So you spent the next 8 to 10 years trying to block that out of your mind, and you guys were still working with Cam through all of that.
Yeah, yes, with the Piana Baptist,
Yeah,
including
yeah,
Cam and other missions, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, so after that meeting, they never talked about it, never revisit with me. Um, I did it, so I just kept convincing, telling myself, repeating to myself what they told me, and yeah,
That
and
you
I like, go ahead,
that you had had a bad dream, that kind of stuff.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. Um, but it's not like I believed myself, but it's just I was trying to convince myself. I knew
Mm,
what I lived was real.
mm,
You know, I talked to the guy. He inserted me. I woke up and went home. You know, I
mm,
remember all the sensations or everything, or how it
mm,
felt. I understand everything. I remember
mm,
everything.
mm,
But yeah, and again, it's for the sake of the gospel. You know, and it's like I feel like okay, even if okay it was real, I can make this little bit of sacrifice for the sake of the gospel, so I don't cause a scandal, so I don't paint this the servants of God in a bad light. So it's
mm,
just many reasons. It's a lot of reasons to deny it. So I grew up, like you
mm,
said, 8 9 years convincing myself of that, and until uh, a family friend, stopped. By then, I had worked for different missions and was and lived on a campus for another. I was living on another missions campus. It wasn't still an Anabaptist mission. And
okay.
then a family friend stopped by and said, you got to be careful with these people you're working with, because I heard da 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 about the same
Mm,
guy,
mm,
and which was Dryer, and that was the light bulb went on in my head. I knew I was right. So,
mm,
and it was about my brother. So the
mm,
guy, so he abused my brother. Similar setup, similar event. He abused my brother and another friend.
mm,
So That's when I finally, I knew it was real. So I
Yeah.
reported it to. So I called my brother, verified everything, got all the details. That's him. That's it, no doubt. That's him. That's how he did me too. And then I talked to another Anabaptist leader. He was working for another mission. So I talked to him. He took me serious, which still this day I don't understand because I didn't meet this guy for a long time. He he believed me right away, and I think within 1 or 2 days he set up a meeting, and
Hmm. Hmm.
that's when uh, the report was taken. Yeah,
The report from the three of you together.
correct.
Yeah. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so that happened in 2013 or 20
Correct.
2011. Okay, 2013. Yeah.
So the abuse happened in 2011,
Okay.
but I didn't learn about it until 1 or 2 years. I think
Okay.
they were trying to hide it. It was um, trying. I think my brother didn't want to ruin his reputation, uh,
Hmm.
so they tried to hide it. He didn't even tell my dad or any other pastor, nobody. They just talked about what happened among friends, just to be careful with him whenever he
Okay.
comes around, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and you say in the book that your brother's friend had told him and he like denied it
Yeah,
only to then have it happen to him and then he
that's
felt a
correct.
lot of shame and yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So w- basically just to maybe fast forward the story a little bit, you guys gave this report in 2013 and you thought you were you under the impression that Cam was doing something with it or did you not know what happened to it?
well, we actually, right after that meeting, on my way home, I cried. I cried because I was like, I just destroyed his life because the meeting was so,
Hmm.
I don't know how to describe it. It was so deep, so heavy, so
Gut wrenching.
incredible, yeah, gut wrenching,
Hmm.
that the two guys, Steve and Harold, they said this guy is done. They went as far as painting scenarios like going to prison. He's done. Nobody will trust him again. It was clear in our mind, and this is
Hmm.
coming from people in the Anabaptist culture. And I think one of them even worked for Cam at some time. You know,
Okay.
so we believed that after that report, it would be taken care of. We weren't sure how what it meant to take care of it at the time, but we
Yeah.
were sure that for sure an organization like Cam will just handle this. There was no doubt. And I think shortly afterwards, um, Drya, came to my dad's place and confessed to my dad. I don't think he
Oh, that's
confessed
right.
um, to the boys. I don't remember, but for sure he kneeled at my dad's feet and just cried and stuff like that. But I don't think that was because of Kim. Later on, I learned that that was for because he was working, which is why the way the Anabaptists work in Haiti, it can be tricky. Because
Hmm.
at the time of my brother and our friend's abuse, he was working for more than one mission.
Oh,
So
okay.
he was working part time for this mission, working uh, for Kim part time and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
it was, I think for time, pretty much full time, but he would also work with another mission. So I think that other mission, which is life literature, I think uh,
Okay.
were hard on him. I think um, one of the guys who came for the report was working with life literature. I think a board member flew down to Haiti, got on his case, confronted him. A board member for life literature, I mean.
Okay.
And so I think too, because he's really smart too. He knows um, when to play the game
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
look like he's broken.
Mm.
That way, the confrontation don't and the exposing don't continue. That way, he just kind of
Mhm.
appear like he's broken. He's repentant. I think he did that, and then he was. I think he went to the States afterwards and repented there. Got disciplined from his church. I think he had a girlfriend. Um, I think they broke. I don't remember all the details. I think
Mm.
they broke up, got back together, got married, and was allowed to go back to Haiti, something like that. I think it wasn't unknown. That's the thing.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
even before he was sent to Haiti, which would be early 2000, late 90s, it was known that he had this type of behavior. And
Interesting. Yeah.
actually, he's right now he's serving a sentence of 9 years, I think, for crimes that he committed, like not Haitian, not the ones in Haiti, the
Yeah.
ones he
Yeah.
committed in the U.S. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was known from his church. Um, I heard that his father-in-law, his girlfriend, they knew it. So yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys had this encounter where again and it's easy to kind of yeah like the way you described it is so well like it's easy to map on Anabaptist mission in Haiti Ocam, but the two guys you first reported to weren't necessarily any authority in Cam. They were just the ones who believed you, and they said they were going to take it to Cam. Is
mhm.
that am I tracking correctly?
Yes, I think one used to work with him, but
Oh,
the
okay.
other one was just a good friend, somebody who
Mm-hmm.
just believed me. It's one of my best friends till this day. It's a guy
Mm-hmm.
that I trust, and really at the time, it's the only person I talked to about that,
Mm-hmm.
and he
Mm-hmm.
believed me, took it seriously, and I think he got Harold, who is someone who worked for Kim and
Okay.
who was also Dryad's boss at the time because he worked for Life Literature at the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but they weren't involved with Kim at the time really, but they
Yeah.
sent the report to Kim.
Yeah. And Jariah goes off, gets disciplined by his church. He's repentant, comes back, married, and in 2018, the 30 boys from I can't say the name of the
Petit Guave.
yeah PT Guav. Is that when they filed the lawsuit then?
So based on what I understand is so as a bit of the timeline, we sent a report in 2013,
Okay.
and when I joined Kim in 2014, Dryer wasn't on campus. I think he was still in the US, I don't know, going through
Okay.
discipline or whatever. But I think shortly after, if not almost the same week or something like that, he he then came. Yeah, if I remember right, came with his wife. So he was married. Um, and for the next 5 years, up until 2019, he kept doing it. And he did Some of it he did on campus. Some of the abuse happened on campus. Some of it happened like 1 mile from camp in the local community there. It sounds like he got some accomplices that, Haitian accomplices who knew what was going on, community leaders,
Mm.
were just in a position where they had to choose between keep receiving help or exposing what was happening, and they choose the help.
Yeah.
So it was it was going on like that, and um, until that was in 2019, not 2018. So in
Oh,
2019,
okay. Okay.
if I remember right, not I don't, it wasn't 30. I think it was just a handful, maybe 5 or 6 guys.
Mm.
Started. They filed a complaint against him in Petit Bois, and that is when I realized that it wasn't just us three,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah, we thought that it was just us three and that it was handled and everything's good. We're like, even with no help, no attention, nothing, every time we try to raise, and talk about it, we're encouraged to forgive, not cause trouble, not cause scandal, and
Yeah.
nothing was done about him. Like, really, he wasn't held accountable. He was just going free, just
Yeah.
traveling everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey friends, this podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Dwell app. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Dwell audio Bible app, but this app is phenomenal. It's changed my life in several different ways. As a Bible college student, I do tremendous amounts of Bible reading throughout the semester, more than I normally do. And I'm not a fast reader. And so one of the ways that I have been able to keep on top of the Bible reading is through the Dwell app. One of the things I really like about it is there's very meditative, reflective music played in the background of the reader. So it's not dramatized. Some audio Bible apps are dramatized, and that's a little, I don't know, not my cup of tea. But it's a very calming and just peaceful way of having the Bible read to you. There's at least 15, I think there's close to 30 by now, different voices that you can choose from. There's many different translations you can choose from. For the ESV, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 voices, if that makes sense. But there's over 15 voices for sure. And so you can have a female voice, you can have a male voice, you can have a British accent, you can have an American accent, you can have a Canadian accent, or I like the British accent, so I listen to the Bible in the British accent, and it's been a really good way to keep on top of my homework. But also, I have found sometimes I'll be listening to audio Bible as I commute someplace, or as I'm doing some other work, or even in the morning. Sometimes it's hard to wake up, you're tired, and to sit down and read, it literally feels like an intellectual exercise. It's like school, like starting your day with school. And I love learning things, but I don't do well at starting my day with school. And so when you wake up and you're tired, but you want to meditate on the Word of God, to just put in my AirPods and listen to the Dwell app is an incredible way to start my morning, just in peaceful worship, meditation. I hear things differently when I hear it being read than when I read it. I personally think you should read and hear it both, but that's one thing I like about audio Bible is different things stick out that didn't stand out before. I'll listen to it as I'm going on a run or something, and I can't say enough good about the Dwell app. And so if you would like to take your meditation, your Bible reading to another level, you can also, if you're not able to sleep at night, you can put in your AirPods and listen to the scripture being read and fall asleep that way. I've used that at times as well. But you can start for free. There's a link in the description below, or you can go ahead and purchase the annual plan, which I have, and to me it's very much worth it, just in the way, a couple things, the way it helps me meditate and kind of a fresh view, a fresh experience with Scripture. And then also the way it helps me keep on top of my homework. It's been very helpful for me. So then in 2019 is when it all became a legal matter in Haiti. Like people filed this complaint,
Mm-hmm.
and Jiraiya was, and Cam as an organization was required to show up at different court hearings and stuff. But they, if I tracked it correctly, he fled the country. Is that correct? He
That's
came to the
correct.
U.S. Yeah. Has he ever stood give an account for those crimes there in Haiti?
No,
No. So
not yet.
Cam essentially negotiated with each of the victims one on one.
Yeah. So he fled. He fled the country. Uh, he was just gonna deny everything, but it was
Mm,
just the evidence were just too too strong against him. So he fled and leaving Cam to deal with it. And I guess Cam just decided, um, you know, it was just easier or in knowing, the poverty. They thought the most efficient way to go about it was to just, start passing around. The tricky thing that Cam did is they were playing on both, like they were offense defense,
mm,
and
mm,
it got lawyered up, hired a lot of lawyers like in the U.S. in Haiti, uh,
mm,
to just guide them through the process. They prepare NDAs and stuff like that. But at the same time, they had some other Haitians contacting the victims to remind them that, we need to be non-resistant. It's wrong for you don't need a lawyer. A lawyer is going to cost you a lot of money it's just hypocritical, really.
mm,
But yeah, started passing few thousands. I heard amounts as low as 3,000.
mm,
And it
mm,
depending on the resistance, they increase it. You know,
mm.
yeah,
So is that I couldn't quite tell from the book. Did they were they able to do that with all the victims, or like you didn't settle with them? Is that correct?
no, I did it, and
Yeah.
so so I was in the position to negotiate for some others. So I spoke for myself, my brother, and our friend.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
we did
okay.
it. We did not take the money,
Yeah.
but based on what they said, most of the most victims did.
Yeah. Yeah. You tell the story of one of the conversations where they were trying to get you to to take the pay, and you mentioned you were testing to see how sincere they were in like wanting to care for you guys, and you gave it a kind of an outrageous amount,
Yeah,
and they made the comment. What was the comment they said to you?
yeah. So I think that for me was eye-opening because
Mm,
I served with these people. I worked with these people for many years, and some of them are Americans, some of them are pastors, some of them I interpret with. So I remember, I know their conviction. I know what they teach. So uh, to hear some of their comments was just unbelievable.
mm,
So they put in place a committee, like I said, with Haitians and Americans to do that. Just contact the victims, get in touch with them, and pay them out. Pay them out, make them sign a legal document, and so they got to work, and they were just making a lot of progress, just manipulating a lot of victims. So they contacted me, you know, but I was representing three victims.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like you said, there was one unbelievable conversations, but this guy started with not causing a scandal. That was
Mm-hmm.
because he was a pastor. Just using the Bible, not causing scandal. These are servants of God. Even if they fall, God is going to restore them. You don't want to fight against God's church and stuff like that. And I would just reject everything they say, just reject, reject. And he finally got to the point where he said, "Well, let's just work something out. We're really sorry about what happened, and we will do anything it takes, you know, to make it right or to support you guys." Like you said, I named a very just an unreal amount, just in millions, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when he said, if you guys if you guys try to take advantage of the situation to make Cam spend too much money, it won't do you any good because you're gonna get sick. Um, Yourself and your family, you'll spend it all on hospital fees, and it was just unreal. And this is the guy that I thought was my friend. This is the guy I thought I served with. I spent time, laugh, eat with.
Mm-hmm.
So, and at the time, it really struck me because my wife, we were pregnant with our firstborn. So I was like, oh no. Yeah, so that was an unreal. And I kept having conversations like that. Another one, the guy was, uh, just called me and say, Dylo, we're or work with us. This is the best option you have because if you hire a lawyer, they're gonna be expensive to pay. They're gonna take if we ever give you some money, they're gonna take most of it. You might end up owing them money actually. Um, and he said, knowing how the justice system is corrupt, judges can be harsh and stuff can be bought, and you might spend 15 years and this is never handled. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the same guy told me. So this was after my wife gave birth. See, I heard that you have a new baby. It would be a shame when your baby grow up and he finds out about what happened to you. So just different
Yeah.
tactics, different strategies to
Mm-hmm.
just get me to just sign the thing, take the money, and just go my way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I read that encounter, I mean, yeah, I too found it unbelievable and immediately thought of the people of Israel in Scripture, where like they were supposed to be this light to all the other nations, but they didn't faithfully follow God, and they ended up becoming just like all the other nations. And
Yes.
here you have a mission organization that is attempting to be a light to other nations, to people, to pagan people, and yet that concept of like bringing a curse on yourself and your family's gonna be sick, like that resembles paganism more than the gospel of Jesus.
Yep. Yeah. And it is it is very sad, and sometimes I don't know what to think because if you like, let's say if you don't say who you're talking about, you just okay. There is two sides to this issue. On one side, you have people offering the victims money. You have people telling the victims if they take the money, they're gonna get sick. You have people telling the victims that they justice will never be served. And on the other side, you have you know people that are talking about justice that are saying this is not right. The and if you would think that the second side is Christian, but it's totally the opposite. The
mm,
judges, lawyers, random journalists, um, people who don't even know, who don't even go to church.
mm,
I, they're the ones saying this is not right. They're the one um, talking about justice, talking about caring for the victims, and you have, like you say, these people who preach the gospel, and they're the one manipulating and covering up and stuff like that. Yeah.
mm, mm. Yeah. So what has, like, as things currently stand, I guess maybe I'll just ask, like, where do things currently stand? Like, from
So,
what I
go ahead.
well, go for it. No, I was just gonna say, from what I understand, it kind of, you eventually hired a lawyer and just started deferring them to the lawyer, and you and your family have created some space between that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Because it was just too stressful, and you could feel that the goal wasn't to care
Mm,
or to be fair. The goal was just how do we get this over with the fastest. And so that I got both tired and disgusted at the same time. I just didn't want to hear about these people because every time you talk to them, you're just mad. I can't believe this. It messes up your mood, and so I just refer them to a lawyer. And actually, um, some of us, because I was representing more than myself, some of us have found uh, resolution, and
mm,
some of us have not yet. Because, like I said at the beginning, it's more than one mission involved. So it depends on the timeline
mm,
and who's to be held responsible. Uh,
mm,
so it's still going on, but I would say that most of it, or at least half of it, is handled already. And
mm,
yeah, so this is how it is right now. But as you know, in these cases, there is a civil part, and then there is a criminal side. So
mm,
I've also been working with the Homeland Security, which is a department of the government, the U.S. government, investigating and uh, getting ready. So during the pandemic, slowed that down a lot,
mm,
and
mm,
we had to change investigators. So it's a long process, but we're not giving up on that, and I think so. I was raised with this non-resistance uh, thing, I mean doctrine, and I think the churches that I was raised in, including Kim, did a good job at making us feel that the government is evil.
mm,
And for most of my life, and it's easy to believe that when you're from a country like Haiti, because you
mm,
see the corruption, you see, okay, this is evil. As a Christian, I want nothing to do with this. And but in this case, and with my experience with with lawyers and with like detectives and investigators on the U.S. government side, I'm like, these people are the Christians in this story. These people are the one
mm,
talking Jesus language in this story.
mm,
If you take the positions or the the comments of a judge, of a lawyer, you can feel, or if you're talking with a detective, you can feel they're disgusted by what happened, and they have empathy, they have a sense of justice, and they want to
mm,
do something to make it stop. They want to make an example out of, and hey. they're talking my language. That's what I want to. So yeah, I've been working with them, and I think um, yeah, I think it's the right thing. It's the right thing, especially about this issue,
Yeah.
about what it means as a Haitian,
Yeah.
and for these 30 other boys who won't be able to sit on a podcast like this. I think the right thing is to sue everybody involved in this,
Yeah.
and to allow them and to allow them to meet the consequences of their actions. I think that
Yeah.
this is God's will for them at the moment. Yeah.
That makes sense. And, I think I grew up Anabaptist. I grew up in that non-resistant world. The passage is quoted often where it talks about settling with your accuser out of court. Actually, I'm trying to think. Does it say the accuser, or is it if you have an issue with someone?
Yeah,
Um,
I think Jesus said, yeah, if I think it's more like an accuser. Like when Jesus, in the context, Jesus saying, he said, actually, on your way to court, try to settle before you
yeah,
get there. Yeah.
yeah. But I think, yeah, and so I've just personally like processed. Not this is kind of a good vivid example that forces us all to think about it. But there's been some other smaller issues and cases that I've processed through, like what is, because in this case that teaching of Jesus is being used to oppress, to manipulate, to silence. Um, it's being used to self-protect, because if they're forced to go to court, they're, like Jesus said, you will have to pay the full consequences. And I think, especially when, yeah, I don't, you didn't ask what I thought, but
Yeah,
I
go ahead. I'm
I just,
interested in hearing that.
especially when you have had the experience with them that you have, where there is, you know, you have the story at the end where there was a Haitian pastor who discovered, like, one of his young dis- men or kids come to him and say that one of the missionaries he's brought in is, I don't think he had like actually abused him, but was trying to
Yeah.
trying to do stuff with him, and he kicked him out, basically, like told him to
Mhm.
pack up his things and leave. And do you talk about consequences that guy ends up facing, or was that story just about the way the pastor handled it?
Mostly. Yeah, I think the
Yeah,
pastor, yeah, the way he handled it and the fact that the guy never heard, he never returned to the country. Yeah.
yeah. Like if there was a place of, if it had been handled like that, if people had that kind of posture, then there's, then it's then there might be a place for, like, letting Jariah face his consequences, and Cam, have forgiveness or whatever for Cam, if they had that, oops, bumping my mic, if they had that response where they're 100% behind the victims and confronting and removing this person. But that's not how the response has been. And in that case, then because we like to pick and choose our scriptures. And I think of the passage where Paul says God has ordained the government to carry the sword, to punish
Yes.
evildoers and reward those who do good. And in this case, this is a matter of an evildoer needing to be punished and give account. And so I support what you're doing. And even though, I mean, right now, that's just words, and giving you space on my podcast to tell your story. But I know that this has already and probably will bring a lot of stress and emotional pain. I mean, even physical stress and pain complications to you and your family. Not because of a curse or anything, but just because of the conflict that this type of thing brings up in our emotional beings, but even in our physical circumstances sometimes. And I just want to bless you with the grace of God to handle that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. And yeah, I was at that conference just a few days ago. Yeah, I had some very interesting conversations,
Hmm.
and uh, and one of
What
them
is?
was, go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish. Sorry, I was jumping in.
Yeah, yeah, and one, actually not just one. Some of these conversations were, what can I do, you know, and um, and I was just blessed. And maybe if you're not from a background of abuse, you may not realize how much it means to just be there, or
Hmm.
like you said, to just um, give these positive words, and like you say, give space on your platform for someone to express himself, because in this oppressive, abusive environment, they tend to make the victim feel like, um, you're the only troublemaker. Everybody is able to get over it, to forgive, to follow God, to be the bigger person, right? So victims are usually victims have to internalize and to
Hmm.
suppress and to not be heard and to put up a front. They have to pretend like they're this tough being who's just getting over it, just serving God, and in spite of, and looking forward to eternity where, the reward is going to be great.
Hmm.
So to just have somebody for no reason, somebody who could easily be like everybody else, take time to listen to you, take time to give you space to express yourself, or to just come to an event like the one I was in, and to
Hmm.
sit in. Some of the sessions were so healing for me. Like I
Hmm.
was at my table, passing around books or signing books, but every chance I got, I just went there, and all they were talking about was how abuse is wrong. It's wrong to abuse, and how God hates it, and what we can do to fight it. And I was like, it was, it was overwhelming to see 750 people just there,
Yeah.
ready to fight for me, learning
Yeah.
how to fight for me. So I'm like, you better not mess with me now, right? That's
Yeah.
all. That's just to tell you, to say thank you. And
Yeah.
yeah, like you say, even with this, letting the government enter, it's very heavy. It's a very
Hmm.
big decision, and like you say, it has a big price tag, uh, both on the emotionally and spiritually and physically, and
Hmm.
so it's not. I'd rather not have to make that choice, right? But
Hmm.
I think, um, life along with God has put me in a position. I don't think there's no other way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks, Dylo, for sharing. We've had some technological difficulties throughout this interview, and it's getting a little later than I had anticipated, but I appreciate you being willing to share the story. It's a very condensed version. I highly recommend, and I'll have a link in the description. But people, for my audio audience, I'm holding up the book so that the people in the video can see it. But In the Name of Mission Work, you can get it on Amazon. And I forgot what I was going to say, but I want to shift. If you still have a few minutes here, for my Patreon audience, I would like to discuss a little bit more in depth. Give me a minute. There was something I was going to say to wrap up our other conversation, but we're gonna discuss a little bit, just some practical, like what if Cam would have handled this well from the beginning, what would that have looked like? Or if you're a part of a ministry or church and you want to be prepared ahead of time, what are some practical things that Dylo, as he interacted, as he reported it, as he talked with different leaders, like what would they have said and done? I remembered what I was going to talk about, and that was kind of dovetailing off of your comment about the symposium you were just at. I think there's a lot of abuse that happens and gets covered up, and it is control. It is malicious, like drive for control to protect reputation and all that. Even in conservative churches, that happens. We know that happens in the world, like you said with the Haitian government. Like it's obvious there. When you're talking about Christian organizations or like Christian founded things, it's maybe a little harder to see sometimes, but that kind of control and manipulation does happen, sadly. But I also think there's a lot of people who are just kind of ignorant, like
Yeah.
not totally clueless that this type of thing goes on. And even just some of the, again, I think I highly recommend this book. I wrote a review on Goodreads, just a short little blurb, but one of the things that I said was I think it should be mandatory reading for anybody going into missions, because it's just a really good analysis, commentary on missions and the posture of a missionary. But some of the things that you said that were going on were going on by CAM, like the way that they didn't allow Haitian translators to stay in the nice rooms, but the Americans are sacrificing a lot to come down. Haitians are used to suffering, and so they can deal with that. Like that's unbelievable. I've never worked for CAM. I've never been a part of CAM in any way, but I'm very familiar with CAM. I know people who have worked for CAM, and the fact that is the posture of of CAM's missions. Like I was totally ignorant to that,
Yeah.
and so to hear criticism of CAM without like that firsthand account, I may have tried to defend it or like give another explanation for it. And that's one of the things that I think is so good about these firsthand stories is it's kind of exposing. And I know I have relatives who work with CAM. I have friends. I know that CAM is, to a certain degree, in some ways, trying to develop a better onboarding process for their staff so that they don't bump into that kind of thing. But all that to say that there's a lot of things can go on that we don't know about. And I think the rise of this whole case, there's been some other cases on the state side here that are making us all aware of how much sexual abuse, how much any kind of abuse does exist even in our churches. And there's a lot of people who don't want that to exist and just didn't know, just
Yeah.
had no clue. So and so the challenge for all of us is just to be willing to learn and to listen to, like, when somebody comes forward, to lean into that. And so thank you. Just to wrap up this kind of time, thank you for sharing. You mentioned before we hit record that you had started a podcast. Do you have a website or a place where if people want to hear more from you, or is it kind of just a book at this point?
Um, well, I have a website. It's in the name of missionwork.com. So it's in the name of the
Okay.
book.com. I have a
Yeah.
Facebook page. Um, the same name, the name of the book, the title, I mean,
Okay.
of the book. And yeah, both, yeah, these are the two main ones. The email is in the name of MW formationwork at gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah, for now it is. And as far as the podcast, I'm praying about it. I do think, um, yeah, there is a need. Yeah, I do feel the burden to be content creator. I'm not sure. In Creole, I know yeah, I'm pretty clear about what I need to do, but I would
Mm-hmm.
also I'd like to be present. I have this pastor in a church, and he likes to say, um, as Christian, we should not abandon the gate of the city, and that always is my mind. I think
Mm-hmm.
as Christian, and he's referring to the Old Testament, how the gate of the city was where everything happened. If they have to stone somebody, if there is, if something, if there's a decision, if it's like as Christian, we should be in the current conversations,
Mm-hmm.
providing uh, biblical insights, going at things at angles that our people are interested in, as Christians. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm looking for a space like that that I can be a part
Mm-hmm.
of and learn from, and hopefully interviewing interesting people that I hear about or read. So
Yeah.
it's still not clear in my mind yet, but I guess I'll let you know how that goes. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I obviously am a content creator. I enjoy it, and I agree. Like, that's kind of why I do it. Is I think we should have conversations around these things.
yeah,
So I would wholeheartedly support you in doing that, but I know that it's can take a lot of time. Can
yeah,
take, yeah.
yeah.
So let us know if you ever do.
Sure, sure, I will.
But for now, people can look you up, type in the name of the book. Pretty much, I think you can just punch it in on Google, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's the first thing that comes up. But um, yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing, and I'm glad to have made the connection with you, and look forward to more conversations.
Yes, and thank you. Thanks for having me. And it matters, right? It matters to take the time to give the space. Um, yeah, to
Mm-hmm.
not dialogue, but to people, you know,
Mm-hmm.
who have been oppressed, who have been silenced, abused. But just give them a space to express themselves, and and that will help
Mm-hmm.
raise awareness around the issue. So thank you. It may not feel like you're doing a lot, but it is a lot. It is very significant. And God bless you for that.